Well, thank you so very much. And so many of you may recognise my voice, and this is what I look like. And so unfortunately, that's what I look like. People talk about that I have a face for radio, and that's what I have. It's funny, I actually went and spoke at a conference, and they knew that I was speaking there, and I introduced myself and said, "Hi, I'm Brett Ryan from Focus on the Family." And she said, "No, you're not." And I said, "Well, I am." And she says, "No." And because you know how like when they, you have a book and they make it into a movie, and the character that you had pictured in your mind wasn't quite right? I wasn't quite right. So I said, "Close your eyes," and she closed her eyes. And I said, "Hi, this is Brett Ryan from Focus on the Family Australia." And she goes, "You are him." So it's a pleasure being with you on talking about this topic today. And I'm hoping that it's not just going to be a passive approach, but some people don't like to talk about things, and I can see from here. So if I resonate with something and you can go, "Well, that's you," if you're coming as a couple, and elbows and hands on the knee or a big elbow into the ribs, I can see it from here. So please make it a safe space. But if you would like to ask questions, so everyone, just get out your phones and all pretend, you don't have to do this, but all pretend to actually put in that on your phone, slido.com, and then put in that hashtag number, and you can ask me anything and everything. Like, for example, I have a wife that has this issue that shall remain nameless. See what I'm saying? And so this is an opportunity for you to ask those curly questions rather than putting your hand up and then everyone knows, "Oh, that's what's going on in your world." So that's anonymous. Although I have done this once before, and at a marriage conference, and someone said, how many hours can I get my wife out of the kitchen? And he put his name down. So that was not as transparent. So I would encourage you to, and throughout, or at the end, and I think I've got, is it 3 hours? Is that right? Somewhere along there, people go, they're already out the door. So a little bit about Focus on the Family. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, and 30 years of helping families thrive. And we do that in a variety of ways. One of those things is through the radio, and we're not just on The Light, we're in 800 plus other radio stations across Australia. And it's equated to about 2 million people get to hear us every week. So it's a very humbling and such an incredible privilege. In fact, I went and spoke at another conference, and this guy came up to me and he goes, "You." I said, "Yes." He goes, "You saved my marriage." And I said, "Oh, okay, is that a good thing?" And he goes, yeah, it is. And he goes, "I was leaving my wife. I had my bags packed. I was hopping in the car and you came on the radio talking about fighting for your marriage and it's worth fighting for." And he was so convicted by that small little 1 minute that he got out of the car, grabbed his bag, went back into his wife and said, "I'm not leaving. We're going to work this out." And after 12 months of counselling, they renewed their wedding vows, and 2 years later he became a counsellor himself. So it's those little things that it's like fishing. You catch one fish and you know that you can keep on going. And I can tell you a number of other stories. If we had more time, I'd be able to share that with you. So we've also got a Facebook account and a YouTube account. We've also got a thing called Family Cast, which is free videos, and everyone likes things for free, don't they? In fact, I was actually started this app, and I was going to have all these free videos. No, sorry, it was going to be people were going to pay me because we're a not-for-profit and way to revenue some money. And then I was really challenged at the beginning of last year to say, "Give it away for free," and everyone go, "Ooh." And so we've been able to provide that for free. So it's through the generosity of people who have a heart for families who've supported the ministry to make that available. So there's some information that you can have a bit later on. So you can be able to see and hear different things that Focus on the Family are about. A little bit about me personally. I've had various different backgrounds of experience. One is I started as a critical care nurse. I majored in intensive care and accident emergency. So for me to have a really good day, someone had to have a really bad bad day. I loved the blood and the guts, and I was at the Children's Hospital, at the Monash Medical Centre, the Trauma Centre, the Alfred Hospital, a variety of different things. So yeah, I loved all that type of thing. And then I had a completely different turnaround. I was invited to become a children's pastor, and I did that for 12 years. So I've helped people sort of physically, then I helped people spiritually, partnering with parents, and then I became the CEO of Focus on the Family, which helps people relationally. So it's all in the people business. I'm very, very poor with my hands, but I can speak. And what I lack in skills, I make up for it in enthusiasm. All right, so hopefully you'll be able to gain some different things. I've been married for 32 years. But then it actually added one more. It's now 33 years, which turns out to be 12,053 days. And Kate was actually going to be joining with me, but she's lost her voice. And we don't know where it is. We've looked everywhere, high, low, and it's been about 8 weeks that she's had no voice. So it's been very, very quiet in our household. But she would have loved to have been with us and with you all tonight. So she sent her apologies. But it's a bit hard to speak. She was going to do some interpretive dance about conflict and, and communication, but we decided that's probably not the best thing. So that's what we looked like 33 years ago. And then we had 3 sons, Taylor, Lachlan and Cameron, TLC, Tender Loving Care. And there's someone here who works with my son. You might be able to recognise where he is in that photo.
In the middle.
Yeah, he's in the middle. He just looks like mischief, doesn't he? Yeah. And they've all left the nest, and so we're empty nesters, and they've all so got 3 beautiful brides. We had 2 COVID weddings, and we've also had the privilege of our youngest son meeting his now bride online. Whole different world. During COVID lockdowns, they were within 5 kilometres radius. They met, and it was quite an interesting story. And so they hit it off, and it's just been a wonderful thing to have that. And the greatest benefit of not killing your children is they give you grandchildren. All right? And so this is Judah, and that's Hadassah, and they're to our eldest son, and then there's Miss Lily. And I don't know what it is about bows now, they get bigger and bigger, and she is an absolute doll. That's Miss Lily, and that's our happy family. And I don't show this to say, hey, look at our family. This is how wonderful it is and how great we are. Yes, we are wonderful, and yes, we are great, but that doesn't show you the heartbreak and the challenges that life can throw you. And if I had more time, I'd be able to share a few of those things. That we've all gone through stuff. And in fact, we've had very significant challenges in our family. But we've had to navigate those through. And particularly for Kate, she's had chronic health issues. She's also had a car accident. We were told we couldn't have babies. Then we proved them wrong. We got 3. She's had chronic pain, chronic fatigue, chronic fibromyalgia, the different things, and then we've had estrangement from our relationship with our family from time to time, and we've navigated those through, and that has come as a result of some really good, healthy conversations and hopefully good conflict resolution. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And the challenge in a short period of time is to download a lot of information, and so if you can write notes, by all means, but if you'd like to, just take photos of the screen, and then you can actually go home and tell your whoever, this is what you're doing wrong. Don't do that, Because I will encourage you to keep the mirror close to your own face and to actually say, how could I apply these principles in my everyday life? And I can guarantee you'll hear something or see something that you'll go, you know what, that's pretty basic. That's pretty, nothing really fancy. Often the simplest things are forgotten, and we can do things in our own abilities and our own knowledge, and we know what we do, like what we call the knowing-doing gap. And I'd like to narrow that gap so we can put the principles of healthy communication and healthy conflict resolution. So that whenever two or more people are in a room together, whether that's with your husband, whether it's with your wife, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with your boss, your neighbours, even in a church community, not this church community, but other church communities, they have conflict. There's always potential for conflict. There's always potential for misunderstanding, and there's always potential for miscommunication. It just happens. It just happens that we are wired that way. We like to get our own way. In fact, there's an old ancient proverb that says this: what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You want something, but you don't get it. You kill and you covet, but you cannot have what you want. You quarrel and you fight. Sound familiar? Not you, but other people. You know, I want something. That's how wars start. I want more land. I want more prestige. Want more power. That's how conflicts start within a marriage relationship. I had an expectation and I didn't get it. Kids will fight with their parents because they want more freedom without the responsibility, and it causes tension. It causes conflict. And we actually see it from a very early age when kids, have like a little boy is playing with toys, 10 toys, and the little boy over here is with one toy, and he's going, I got the 10 toys, one toy, I want that one toy. I want that, and I just want more stuff. And that's how quarrels and battles and fighting begins, because we don't get our own way. And that's what happens in our everyday life. But it doesn't have to be. And there's actually a thing called the relational law of responsibility, or the relational law of relationships. And that is, another person can't make you angry. They can influence, but they can't make you angry. And often you hear kids say, oh, he made me, she made me, and we blame everyone else, but you actually are in control. You have got the responsibility to control. They can influence, absolutely, but they do not control. You have those choices. So again, the bottom line is you have to look at your mirror and how you deal with your situations, which are always going to happen because it's inevitable, but we're always going to be placed in a position where we don't get what we want, and we quarrel and we fight. So how can we communicate more effectively? So what I'm going to do is things that assist. I'm never going to tell you how to do something. That's more descriptive or prescriptive. What I'm going to do is give you things that assist and things to avoid when it comes to conflict and communication. And then we'll open up for some Q&A. Does that sound okay? We'll see how we go. And obviously, we'll finish by, 11 o'clock? All right, so we've got that. All right, so the keys to healthy communication. And what I might do is I'll just put it all up and then I'll talk them through. Does that sound okay? So you can take photos if you wanted to. All right, the first one is we need to see the other person as of a high regard, to respect them and to value them, to see them as really important. That's with our family relationships, with our marital relationships, with our neighbours. If we think they're inferior and we're superior, we've already got a gap. And we need to actually narrow that gap. And when you see someone with a higher regard, a higher value, you've got to treat them. Like if the Queen came, the Queen can't come now anymore because she's not here with us. But if the King came, we would treat him with a high regard. We'd treat him with a high value. But we shouldn't treat people differently just because of their position, their authority, their power. We should treat everyone equally. We should treat everyone with a high value. Everyone matters. And for those who have got a faith, we'd actually talk about that God thinks you're of a high value. He thinks you're important. But you need to see yourself as important. And that's unfortunately, in my role at Focus, we get a number of people who email us or send us a telephone call because they've been in a situation where they have been mistreated. And you could talk about domestic violence in that, but often we have to actually encourage them to build up their own self-worth, their own self-esteem, their own self-confidence, because it's been eroded over years, because they haven't been treated with value, dignity, and respect. And I'm here to tell you, you do matter. You are important. And that's for you, young lady over there. You matter. You're important. And you need to see yourself as high regard. And the way you do that, then you can actually start treating other people with a high regard as well. Second thing is, we talk about quality time and quantity time. Now, quality time it makes sense. But it has to be adjusted with quantity. You can't go up to someone and go, okay, I've got 5 minutes. Tell me your hopes and dreams. Go on, tell me. Go on, tell me. No, it comes over time. And that actually builds that relationship because it's actually saying, you're of a high value. You're important. I'm going to spend some undivided attention. But we've got trapped in these things that go, yeah, good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Don't you feel really important when I do that? We call that phubbing. We're using our thumbs or phones or our thumbs to ignore somebody. And that's not great. That doesn't treat people with a high regard. So intentional time and quality and quantity is vitally important. Another thing, very simple, is if I make your eye-to-eye contact. Now, children, particularly boys, don't like that. They don't like that. Look at me, look at me, look at me. Like that. In fact, the best thing you can do for having those conversations is either go for a walk or drive a car when you're both looking at straight ahead. It's great when they're going to learn how to drive their driving lessons. We had some amazing conversations with my boys when we were in the car. And it means that I'm actually having a chat in a non-threatening environment, but there's other times when you do need to look in somebody's eyes. And I really care for you. My former staff used to say that I looked into people's soul when I'd say, how are you? How are you really? And then they'd break into tears, because it's my superpower. I make lots of people cry, all right? But the fact is, I need to make sure that I have given you my undivided attention. That actually makes it so that the tension in your relationship or in communication is reduced, because the simple fact is you're looking at me. You're not discarding me. You're not ignoring me. You're making me a priority. Another thing is, simple things, fun. When was the last time you had a good old-fashioned laugh? Gut-wrenching laugh. Just fun, creating memories together, because that creates bond. There's another proverb that says, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. When I was a nurse, I used to use humour a lot to try and communicate to distract someone who was in pain or in crisis, just to distract them. I remember someone was coming in with a heart attack at Christmas time. So as he was coming in the heart attack and we're trying to treat him, I said, so have you done your Christmas shopping yet? And he starts bursting into laughter, and his heart rate actually reduced, his blood pressure reduced, simply by just having distraction. But that's the same thing in relationships. It's having fun together, games, laughter, doing stuff together, creating wonderful memories. And then the other thing is, showing someone of a high value is showing genuine interest. So a common question that I would often ask, so tell me your story. I'll go, Richard, tell me your story. And he goes, well, what do you want to know? I said, you're the storyteller. I'm the story listener. Tell me what's going on. And then people go to things like what they do for a job. And that's important. I don't have any problems with that. But I like to find out who they are, what makes them tick, what drives them, what's motivates them, what's their family dynamics, what's their history. And you'll be surprised. I reckon written on my forehead is, please tell me your life story. I'm on a plane and people will tell me all sorts of things in a very short period of time. And in fact, it's interesting. I had a conversation I had. I was going up to Brisbane, I think, and I was sitting next to someone from the whole plane was full of the Hawthorn Football Club. And I happened to barrack for Hawthorn, so I thought it was pretty cool. Anyway, I'm talking to this guy. He was one of the trainers. And he's opening up with me. He goes, who are you? I've never spoken to anyone about this stuff. I said, I'm just a guy who likes to listen to stories. And I think we should have that in every environment, that you're a good story listener. If you give someone the undivided attention, they will tell you. And that's how we can improve our conversations and improve our communication. When we ask questions, tell me what's going on in your world. Help me understand. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, about conflict resolution, in a few moments' time. So, asking questions and showing interest. And the final... it's not moving forward. I don't know what's happened there. My computer's frozen. Anyone got any? Oh, here we go. All right, some other keys to healthy communication to assist is One is creating a safe environment that you can hear what someone has to say and not judge them, not to give them their opinion, not to actually dismiss them. Often in saying in a child-adult relationship, we might be dismissive of what's going on in a kid's world because we think, does it really matter? Because we're putting it through our adult lens, our adult eyes. And we're diminishing them, but we need to come alongside them and validate their emotions, validate what's going on. And that's why that creates a safe environment. In fact, in a marital relationship, when someone contacts me and actually asks me, sort of like they're in a crisis in their relationship, I often actually I want to find out what the state of their heart is. If it becomes hard, and it's very, very difficult to resolve. But if it's a little bit soft, and in fact, the state of the heart flows everything else. When one feels safe, when one feels secure, then healthy communication. And dare I say it, when one feels safe, you can have conflict because you feel safe. You're not going to be judged. You're not going to be dismissed. You're going to be validated for what you're going through. Another thing is, as I said, similar is valuing their opinion. Gee, I haven't thought about that. That's a good thought. I haven't. That's amazing. Quite often we've resolved issues when my wife and I have had intense fellowship. That's what we call it. Some people are going, what's he talking about? Intense fellowship moments. She would say something and I'm going, what are you saying? And she goes, what do you mean? And I said, is this what I hear you said? And they go, no, I didn't mean that. And so, well, that's what you said. That's because we haven't heard the other person. We haven't valued their opinion because we've judged them. And, assuming, as I said, it makes you an ass out of you and me. I don't know if anyone made that sense, but it makes sense to me. Finding that common ground, our value system, our belief systems, listening and being heard. And my wife really needs that. In fact, I've got this a slight hearing impairment. All right. So my wife has sometimes commented that she goes, "You're not listening to me." Well, I actually got my ears tested, and it was discovered that I've actually had a hearing impairment. You're laughing. I thought you said this was going to be a safe place. They're laughing at me. Yes, I have a hearing impairment. Anyway, I have the evidence to prove it. So then I went home and told my wife that I've got a hearing impairment. So for about 24 hours, there was understanding in our household. The boys were understanding. And then after 48 hours, it was all forgotten. So I constantly remind them that I have a hearing impairment, but I also think I have a processing disorder as well. And that's for another day, all right? You didn't hear that from me, and don't tell Kate if she ever comes to these things. All right. Now, some of you may recognise or identify the languages of love. And it was a book written by Gary Chapman and a co-author. And there's, languages of love for your husband, languages of love for your wife, language of love for your kid, your cat, your dog. There's everything. There's a whole franchise. It's fantastic. But we all have a primary and secondary language of love. And when we actually tap in to our significant others, their language of love, and this includes your work colleagues, this includes your family members, and even in your communities, wherever it may be, if you can tap in to their language of love, you're speaking their language. But if you're giving out of your language of love to another person, and that's not their primary language of love, it's like you're speaking a foreign language. A disconnect. So for many people, for kids, their language of love can often be just time, spending time. And that's my wife's language of love. I need to spend quality of time to reduce stress, to reduce conflict, to reduce any tension, because I've done regular deposits of time. And I treat it like a bit of like a bank account. I need to make regular deposits. And if we all know, if you take withdrawals, you can go bankrupt. And that's not good for any healthy relationship. So I need to make regular deposits. Another language of love is words of affirmation. That's one of my primary languages of love. So Kate builds me up. She's my number one critic and also my number one cheerleader. Gifts, little gifts. It doesn't have to be expensive. It's those little things, and I'll give you a little hint. If you're a guy here, game changer. If you're ever with your spouse and they make the comment in a shop, "Oh, gee, I love that," make a mental note of it. And then you go back there, buy the small gift, and you give them, and they go, oh, man, he remembered. Oh, brownie points all over the place. So now my wife actually says, I like that, but I don't want it. This is different things. Acts of service, doing things for other people. And that can be quite often what I default to. I love serving people. And Kate thinks it's sort of like a disease. I like to serve. I like to give things. But if I'm serving, I'm not spending quality and quantity time with my wife. Do you see that? There's the disconnect. If I'm doing stuff around the house and doing things, I'm not giving her, depositing into her language of love bank account. And the final one is physical touch. And we obviously know that maybe sexual touch would be an important aspect, but it's also those little things, those connection points. There's a little holding hand. Have you ever seen a mature age couple walking down the road? Just give me, next time you see a mature age couple walking down the road, watch the people walking past them. So just give you a little idea. So the mature age couple holding hands, going this way, and the other people following them down this way will go. It just makes people laugh and smile when they see that longevity, that because we all want that. We all want to have that aspect of trying to do things and see it to the end and creating that legacy. But we also know that life does throw out curveballs, and there'll probably be people in this room that life hasn't gone as planned, as well as you would like, as even maybe by your own choices, maybe because of the choices of others, or maybe because of just circumstances. And I'm here to tell you, it doesn't have to be that way. That past does not determine your present or your future. Don't allow the past or the present to continue to dictate. Put things into place and get the right supports and the right help to be able to navigate those things as best you can. All right, so, excuse me. Here are some things to healthy communicate to avoid. Boom, boom. I don't know, that's a TV show or something like that. Being defensive. If you can't be wrong, you're always defensive. And I unfortunately default to that. I don't like being wrong. I like being perfect. I like being 100% correct at all times. And if I get in a mistake, I feel very defensive. I can become very, very, combative. And it shouldn't be that way. If someone's talking to you and you're waiting for them to stop moving their lips, you're not really listening. You're just sort of saying, stop talking, because I want to say something. If you're continuing to plan your rebuttal or what you have to say is more important, you're not actively listening. You're actually hearing them, but not listening. And that's not good. That's things to avoid. Another thing you need to do is, as I said, to validate what's coming, and don't be judgmental, don't be dismissive. The body language. Has everyone's done this? Not good in communication, all right? The roll of the eyes, body language, drop of the shoulders. But if you lean forward and you're actually engaged, it makes all the difference in communication. So your body language says a lot about you as a person, but it also shows the value to the other person when you really listen. And it may be, and I'm going to give you a whole clear thing to do in a few moments' time of what you can do that will guarantee that you'll become a better listener. So stay tuned. That's about 11 o'clock. Sometimes we can get to the point where we have to be around that other person all the time, and we need to give each other space. We need to be interdependent, not codependent. And if you want some more information, our website we're just actually upgrading a new website, it's launching on Monday. So you're the first people that ever hear that, so keep it secret. And on Monday it's being launched, but we've just transferred all of our content from our old website to this new website, and we've got over 8,000 different pieces of content. So there's plenty of things for in your family, and I actually like to think that we're like from everything from in utero to the grave and everything in between. That's what it's a one-stop shop on healthy families and healthy relationships. And I cannot emphasize the importance of being the best version of yourself to resolve conflict and to communicate more effectively is be the best version of yourself. That includes a bit of self-care. You'll be a better you when you look after me. And it's not being selfish, it's actually being selfless. To find out how you can be recharged. And, and I cannot emphasize enough about exercise, good diet, plenty of water, and actually serving others is a remedy for healthy you. In fact, the more me monsters that are out there, we actually see an increase in mental health problems and stress. And we're going to be talking about that later on in September, I think. I'm going to be coming back. Maybe if you want to come back and hear me or something like that. I'm going to do another series on mental health and anxiety and how to deal with that. But I'll talk a little bit more about self-care in that time. Other things to avoid to help with our conflict is to... Sorry, I think I've got this. Yeah. All right. Here are some things in conflict that you could actually put into place. Things to avoid. Sarcasm and criticism doesn't go very well. Our words do matter. You know that saying, sticks and stones may hurt my bones and words will never hurt me? That's a stupid saying. I used to, put a plaster on someone, and I knew in about 5 to 6 weeks that bone will heal and it will never break in that same spot. It's quite extraordinary. But the words can actually penetrate. And it's not just 6 weeks ago that you heard. I've heard people, and I've helped people who have, 5, 6, 10 years, decades, that words that they were said about them can do a lot of harm. So we've got to watch what we say and how we say it. Our tone, our volume make all the difference. And if I could actually if you want to have one thing that you could put in on your fridge that I can guarantee that will remind you, learn to react, learn to respond, not react. When we respond, we're in control of our tone, we're in control of our volume, we're in control of what we say and how we say it. But when we react, it can shut the conversation up. So maybe when you're in a situation, you've got to be like the duck. On the inside, you might be freaking out, but on the outside, cool, calm, and collected. And that's sometimes what you need to do when you're in conflict. Maybe your emotions, you're being triggered, things are building up. Remember, you're in charge. You're responsible for your actions. You're responsible for what you say. And you need to make sure that you don't say something in the spur of the moment that you can't take back. And if you've got a short fuse, you need to deal with that. You need to deal with that. Anger is not just bad for those around you, and the collateral damage is a bit like doing a bomb, and it has a domino effect around people around you, but it's actually doing you harm as well. Anger is actually it's like a seed of that can actually be quite cancerous to your own health and well-being. So you really need to deal with that. Same thing as I would say for forgiveness as well, which we'll talk about that in a few moments' time. Don't give someone the silent treatment. You might be needing to process something, but don't say, well, I'm not talking to you. There was a situation where a husband and wife were, the husband did something at the beginning of the week, so the wife actually said, you know what, I'm going to get even on him, and I'm not going to talk to you for the whole week. Didn't tell him that that's what she was doing, but she froze him out. And at the end of the week, the husband came and says, look, we're getting on really well lately, aren't we? Wasn't probably the motive, but freezing somebody out or keeping them the silent treatment is not good for healthy conflict resolution. Give them space and say, look, I need some time out. That's good. You're telling them, but actually giving them silent treatment doesn't work. Using you language, avoid that. You always, you never, not great for conversations, because it's never always, it's never everything. And remember, and I know you might have heard this expression, when you point your finger at somebody, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. Have a look at your own face and what you've contributed. You may have been 5% at fault, but own your 5%. And don't come back with, 5 years ago you forgot to take the rubbish bin out. And remember that? What? That's 5 years ago. Don't bring those things, those past issues, and bring them back to the forefront. When they've been forgotten, it should never be brought back again. Kate's got this great motto of forgive, forget, and move on. Easier said than done, but forgive, forget, and move on. And that's a process that's going to only time and is going to be your greatest healer, to allow time to heal those things. But don't bring them back. Keep a short accounts. And if you have this idea that you need to win every argument and have the last say, you've already lost. And in fact, if you want more information on this, we've actually done a whole series of videos on caring, communication, conflict. There's a little bit more detail in that on that video platform. We've also got doing an online marriage conference coming up in, I think the next one's September. And we've also got a marriage retreat in October and November of this year. So there's different things you can invest in your relationship. But one of the things in that is we talk about the win-win. The win-win. Because if you're a team as a couple, you shouldn't be combatants. You shouldn't be enemies. You're teammates and you need to resolve things. So when one person wins and the other person loses in an argument, you both lose. It shouldn't be like that. In a team, everyone wins together or you lose together. Let's make sure that in your relationship, if you have a conflict in a situation, you have to have the last say just to get that last little point again or that little barb at the end, you're actually losing the battle. You might win the war, but you lose the battle of a relationship. And that's not a successful relationship. So another thing to assist in conflict, controlling your tone and volume. All right. Learn to respond, not react. Controlling your tone and your volume. I've already mentioned that. When you have a situation, and I say like the garbage bag, the garbage and rubbish, for example, and then you're talking about the rubbish, but then you bring in something about the laundry. And then you start talking about the laundry, then you start talking about keeping the bedroom tidy. And then you start bringing, do you see how, what started off with the rubbish bins end up becoming other things? Stay on task, stay on topic, deal with that. Don't bring everything else. Because otherwise it's that collateral damage. And you bring out other things and you're never going to resolve those things. In fact, there's an old, another proverb, and it comes from, don't let the sun go down on your when you're angry, or don't let the sun go down on your wrath. And when Kate and I were first married, we thought we had to resolve every issue. We thought we'd had to, before the sun went down. But we found that the sun had well and truly gone down and the moon had well and truly gone up, and we're still having this argument and disagreement. Does anyone else feel a bit better about themselves, Okay, maybe me. Okay. And so we actually made that agreement that we'd have to say, hey, let's take a time out. Let's acknowledge that we're not going to resolve this issue because we're tired, we're grumpy, we're teammates. Let's resolve this issue and to say, let's agree to disagree, but let's talk about this in the cool light of day. And we found that actually resolved a lot of issues. By the morning, we'd forgotten what the conversation was the night before anyway, and that solved a lot of hassles. But we'd always make that tension before. So we would always try and avoid when it's getting tired and you'll bring other things, stay on topic. And another thing you do, if you've got a situation where there is tension, there is conflict, and it needs to have that conversation, you need to talk about it. Maybe you can go to your husband or your wife, whatever it is, or your kids, or whatever, and schedule a time. Actually say to them, look, there's something going on, and I would like to talk about it because our relationship at the moment is not what it could be or what it should be. Can we talk about that on maybe Friday nights? So you don't bombard them, so you've been thinking about it all day, they've come home from work, tired and grumpy, you don't know what's happened, and then you go, we're going to talk. You're not setting them up for success. You're not setting up the conversations for success. So schedule a time and a place, and sometimes it could be better to actually go to a neutral area, a cafe, somewhere in public so you can't yell at each other. It's always... And to answer to your question, instead of saying you always, you never, you can say, this is the way I feel. They can't take away what you're feeling, your emotions, your connection. This is how I feel. What's happening in our relationship is this is how it's making me feel. You're personalizing. You can't take that away. And that's a different language, using I rather than you. Because you use pointing the finger, it's accusatory, it's combative, whereas you say, this is how I'm feeling. but remembering, watching your tone and your volume. Including others, it can be beneficial. Including others that are mature, maybe a pastor, maybe a counsellor. Keep your little cluster of people small. Because quite often, and I'm not saying this is a huge generalisation, is guys tend to keep it very insular, very private, isolated. We don't tend to share our feelings. But women sometimes, I'm not saying everyone, and no women here, but other women, they might go and share something with another person just to get that empathy, to get that understanding. But then they go and tell somebody else, and they go and tell somebody else. And it actually it dissolves the relationship because you're actually undermining that. And you may resolve your issue, but that other person is going to carry that offence because they don't see the resolution. And they're going to judge your husband, or they're going to judge that other person. And so don't share it with a number of people. Find a very secure, trusted, high maturity, and if you've got a faith, to actually have some people who align with your faith and your belief to come alongside you going through that. If I was to give you something, and I really encourage you, if you really want to improve the health and well-being of your relationship, do come to our next online course that we're doing. And there's a thing called the reactive cycle in that. And that reactive cycle, you can discover what your triggers are, what annoys you, what ticks you off, and why you respond the way that you respond. And I tell you what, Kate and I went to a marriage retreat in America a couple of years ago, and they did the reactive cycle there. It was a game changer. It changed our whole perspective. When we were having those intense fellowship moments, we can actually say to ourselves, hey, you know what? It just triggered something. I need to process that. Remember, I'm responsible. You can influence, but I'm responsible. I need to control what I'm doing. And that makes all the difference. So that's something, understanding your own triggers, but that needs a little bit of exploration. Try and resolve issues as quickly as possible. Not everything can be done overnight, but I remember my wife one time, we were doing something and I don't know what I did, but I must have done something really bad. And Kate said, look, I need to go and I need some space. I need to go for a walk around our lake. And I said, no, don't. We need to resolve this issue. Give me a hug. Back off, Brett Ryan, So she went for the walk and I followed her. I don't recommend it, all right? I know now, but this is before I knew my knowledge. And I followed her and she looks at me and goes, you've got to be kidding me. But I said, I want to resolve the issue. And she said, I just need some space. So her story is that she rants to God. She's a woman of faith. She rants to God, this husband that you gave me, you like that. And then after she rants to God for a while, then God sort of challenges her and says, well, what did you do to contribute to this? Well, after she got around the lake and she came back, she realised it was all her fault, not mine. I talked about the win-win before, and that's something that's of great importance. And the other thing is there's a whole language of apologies. There's a different thing. And I'll stare at Richard for a moment, so I apologise to you, just someone I know. And when you're little, kids, you're trying to teach them how to say sorry, and you say sorry, and they go, I'm sorry. It's not really heartfelt, is it? All right? It's not you don't really feel that connection. And someone's forcing you to say, I'm sorry. Or they follow it, oh, I'm sorry, but you're a butthead. It's just that's that last say, that's that little barb at the end. But a real true apology is like, I'm really sorry for raising my voice. That is not what I think about you, and I'm really sorry. Would you please forgive me? It changes the tone, it changes everything by just actually owning it, not being defensive, and actually acknowledging what you did, but also how it could make the other person feel, and then asking them forgiveness. Now, if we could all do that in our family relationships, if we could all do that in our kid parenting, if we could do that with our relatives and things like that, just to own the things that we could do and make sincere apologies. But I tell you what, your kids will benefit from seeing you apologise. When you stuff up, when you make mistakes, knowing that if you own it, then they will actually own it when they make a mistake. Because otherwise, they'll go through life thinking the world owes them a favour. And it's everyone else's fault rather than me. And that's a lesson that we all could benefit from in great detail. So there's another ancient proverb that actually says, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Something that we can apply in everything. So I told you I was going to give you the game changer, all right? This is all a game changer. And I learned this from a group of grade 6 students, all right? I used to work as a school chaplain for a number of years, and I used to teach in the classes, and I used to do like CRE on steroids. Like it was... they used to give me a room this size, and instead of just one class, they used to give me 3 classes. Instead of giving me half an hour, they gave me an hour. And they were making some noise one time, and I said, "Just can you just be quiet just for a little while?" And all the kids just went like this. I said, "How did you learn that?" They said, "We learned that from our prep teacher." So prep teachers matter. And I said, "So why did you do that?" And they said, "Well, it reminds us to keep our mouths closed." So I'm going to get you all to do this now, all right? Just all do this. Put your finger over your mouth like this. So it reminds you to not open your lips. And if you want to go to a higher level, like to a PhD or a level, go like this. So everyone do that like this. So not only are you listening, but you're also sounding intelligent. And I know this is going to come a bit of a shock for many of you, but I'm often not a loss for words. And so I often, when in a conversation, I might go like this. And my kids have seen me do this. I might be in a room and I'll go, Just because I might just want to stop them from moving their furry lips, because I want to say something, but I have to remind that they matter, they care. And now I don't have to do that now because I've grown up. But this being quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry can apply to every principle in our lives. That not just hear someone, but actually really listen to them. Not jump into conclusions or jump to your defense or to jump in and assume what's going on, but to really listen. And you may have heard this before, but we've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. We should use it in that ratio. We should really, really listen to someone and to validate what they're going through, to understand where they are coming from and see it from their perspective. When we do that and put it through the filter, and so that's the same thing with a kid, it can be same with a work colleague, it can be with our spouse. When we see it from the other person's perspective, their point of view, we go, that makes sense. And it resolves conflict immeasurably. So in summary, above all else, when we have our communication, when we have our conflict, and it's inevitable, it's going to happen, is see the other person with a high regard. See the other person with a high value, a high worth. And if we do this, our words, our actions, and our attitude, the way that we think about them, will be changed immeasurably, and we will be more cautious of what we say and what we do. And the motto of all of this, the big summary is, do no harm. Do no harm. Relationships matter. We're not meant to do life in isolation. We're not meant to do things that I can do it myself. We're meant to do things in community. We're meant to do things in a community. And I love doing what you're doing here at this series of coming together and just getting ideas and learning, because we all can learn different things. I'm an active learner. I love learning and learning new skills. I'm an avid reader. And we should actually all have an attitude of lifelong learning. We can all do with some adjustments. And even if it's 1%, it can make the destination, wherever we're heading, in a whole lot different. And you can put some of these principles, hopefully, you can apply some of those principles. Maybe it might be just simply listening more attentively. Maybe it may be just learning to respond, not react. Maybe it could be to stop using the you language and start using, this is the way it makes me feel, I feel. Or when you're in that situation, asking questions, showing genuine interest in the other person. And then if we could see they are of high value, they are of high worth, and I don't want to do any harm to our relationship. In fact, I want our relationship not just to survive, but to thrive. And if we can all do that, maybe we won't have as much tension and much as conflict in our relationships. It's going to happen. We're all different people. We've all got different opinions, and that's okay. If we're not all robots. We're not all puppets. We all have different thoughts and processes. We all have different experiences. And in fact, one thing I haven't shared, but I would share it if you want to come and find out a little bit more about family of origin, because that has a significant part to play in the way that we deal with issues. From what we observe from our parents, how did they deal with stress? How they dealt with their finances? How they dealt with work ethic? How do they deal with finances? How they dealt with parenting and how they were demonstrative and all those things? We observe those things, and unless we make the intentional decision to do things differently, we tend to default to the things that we're familiar with. And that's the reason why sometimes we have that tension in our relationships, simply because of different family of origin. It doesn't make one right and wrong wrong. It just means it's different. And in relationships, we're all different, but we're all of high regard. We're all of high worth, and you do matter, and you are important. So finally, if you have this in mind, I'm hoping that the things that I've shared with you, or if you've taken photos and different things, you'll be able to apply into your everyday life. And if we can't, if you find you'd like to have more information, we're going to do some Q&A in a moment and get that out in a few moments. You can ask me those questions. I love the curly questions. So the curlier the better, even if it's hypothetical as well. But if you'd like to contact us, this is our website at families.org.au. Our email address, you can contact me and ask me questions, or I either can send it to you, or our pastoral care counsellor will be able to help you. And all of this is, we are so proud of being part of Australia here for the last 30 years. And I hope that we're going to be here for another 30 years, helping families thrive. And we do that, as I said, in a variety of ways. And it's only been possible because of the generosity of people who support the ministry. And if you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, you can either have one that arrives in your inbox weekly or once a month. Our weekly one usually takes a minute to read, a minute to listen to, or a minute to watch, because everyone's attention span is getting shorter and shorter. But we also have different webinars, different opportunities that may be able to help you in your situation, or you might be able to help somebody else going through a similar situation. But we've got different things, and in fact, in 2 weeks' time, or a week and a half's time, I should say, it's actually National Families Week. And we've put together, and all 800 radio stations across Australia are going to be playing. I actually had to produce 170 little 30-second promos for all the radio stations to play, and we've actually got a free family toolkit. It's got a variety of different things for every age and every stage. You can download it; it's all for free, and that's going to be made available. And on the quiet, no one knows about this yet, I actually just recorded a 2-part series on resilient families. And if you sign up for the downloadable thing, you're going to get that for free as well. So that's another little bonus. But don't tell anyone. It's going to shh. All right, there's some questions. Good. All right. And I have not previewed them, so I'll just go in the order that they came in, and then we'll take it from there. Is that okay? All right. So if I don't get to your question, it's not because I just didn't have time to get there. All right. What about if you tell your story, but the other person you tell it won't believe your words, but makes up their own reality? Unfortunately, in our culture today, I'll use this word, and it's not necessarily applicable to that, but narcissism is alive and well. People, their own self-importance has increased, and I actually deal with a number of people who are in that situation. And I'm not saying that that's what's happening here, but if you're sharing emotionally, and this is how you're feeling, you can't make someone believe you. You can't make someone listen to you. They can make up whatever they want about you. You can't control that. So you've got to find a community of people that actually believe in you, think that you are important. And obviously, I don't know if it's a marital relationship or what have you, but in this situation, you can't control, but you can still say, this is how it makes me feel. And when you make those things up or make claims about me, that really hurts. I feel really invalidated. And I'm hoping that that's not the way you feel about me. And so you're actually going back to how you're feeling, your emotions, and communicating that. Don't internalize this. Don't just put up with it because you can and you should. And that's a lot of people who have put up with a lot of stuff. That's not the way we should do life. But so communicate that. All right? Someone just said hello back. You just want to do that. A lot of people write test, and so just because they can. All right? How do you regard your spouse in high value if they have hurt you deeply? Yeah. People do make mistakes, and their mistakes can hold that person of moving forward. If you continue to if you continue to refer to things of past issues, you're not allowing that person to move forward. But if they have hurt you and they have asked for your forgiveness, you need to start moving on and forgive, forget, and move on. Now, I use this analogy, and it may be a poor analogy, but I had my appendix out, and some years ago, and I was speaking to someone a couple of years ago, and they said, I just had my appendix out, and I said, I did that as well. And my wife looks at me and says, have you? And I said, you came and visited me in the hospital with the kids. She goes, did I? And I said, you know that scar that's on my stomach? She goes, what scar? And I said, the scar. She goes, is there a scar? I said, you're obviously not taking it all in, are you? But the scar has faded over time. If I keep on scratching on that wound, it'll continue to fester. It won't heal. And that's like unforgiveness. It's not allowing healing to take place. And if I had more time, forgiveness is there's a guy named Arch Hart, he's a psychologist, and he says, forgiveness is taking away my right for hurting you for hurting me. Because we like vengeance, we like getting even, we like to get back at them. But in fact, forgiveness is actually saying, I don't need to do that. And for those who've got a faith, they don't talk about God has forgiven us, so therefore we need to forgive others. Now, there are some hurts, there are some situations that are very painful, and I'm sorry if that's been your story. But forgiveness is not necessarily restitution of a relationship. It's not always reconciliation. Sometimes that person you may never reconcile with, but you still need to forgive them because forgiveness is for your benefit. Because all the evidence, all the research would say forgiveness is actually lowering your heart rate, lowering your blood pressure, increasing your immunity, and it gives you much more joy and much more freedom when we actually do forgive. So it's actually of benefit to you. And the correlation between ill health and unforgiveness is increasing. So if you really, really want to live your life and life to its full, forgiveness is part of that. Hopefully that makes sense. So, but even the hurt there, it's there, it's genuine. And if they've apologized, you need to start moving on. All right. Should we make concessions during conflict for those who are going through mental health issues? Yes and no. Yes, you have to be empathetic. Yes, you have to actually understand that they're going through something, but that does not mean it justifies them treating you disrespectfully or treating you like a doormat and taking advantage of you or and you enabling their poor behaviour because they've got a poor they've got mental health issues. It doesn't justify them treating you poorly. But you have to show grace, and grace is unmerited favour. And God's shown us grace, therefore we need to show others that grace. But I was just speaking to one of our pastoral counsellors today, and it was about a husband and wife who've got their young adult son who is a gambling addict and a drug addict, and he's stolen money, and he actually stole the wife's work credit card. And so they've paid all this debt. And when I say, show concessions, yes, they understand, but they're actually showing too much concessions. They're actually enabling his behaviour until he faces the consequences of his poor choices and the collateral damage that has been resulting. I didn't advise this situation, but my pastoral care counsellor has reiterated this. They need to face the full consequences, and that includes the repercussions of legal ramifications. And that's the same with domestic violence or whatever. Some people say, oh, I'm sorry, I will never do it again. No, you've still done it. You still have to face the consequences. I can still love you, we can still reconcile, but you still have to face the consequences of doing something to my person, or you're stealing or vandalising, whatever it may be. They still have to, you can show concessions. Yes, they're angry, yes, but they are still in full control. So I think it's the yes and no. Hopefully that makes sense for that one. How do you know the difference between anger manifested in yelling, etc., versus verbal abuse? Verbal abuse tends to be cutting, it's more personal. Yelling is just raising the voice. And so some families, that's the way they communicate. So for example, Italians. That's how they communicate. Yeah, that's how and they might be just saying, I'm just having a robust conversation. For a family who comes from a very quiet environment, they're going, what's going on? They're yelling at each other. That's different. When it's verbal attack and saying and I'll use expletives and it's directed at you, that is emotional abuse. And that's not to be tolerated. That's not to be tolerated. All right. How can I stop feeling awkward when I meet someone who I have hurt in the past? I did insult one girl at the other church and I fear that I might meet them again. Yeah, we've all done things that we regret. But maybe if you know that person, it will maybe making the effort to apologise to them again. Maybe actually to make that full-throated, fully repentant, great humility and actually say, I am really sorry for the words that I said to you. In fact, my wife said that to a fellow friend at a sporting function. My wife was quite obsessed with sport at a younger age, and she just said, why are you coming? You're hopeless at netball. Not really the nice thing to say about a friend, but she really was convicted and she actually apologised to that person. Talk about things coming back to, my wife is another woman that when my wife was very, very forthright in her beliefs and her value systems, and she was at university, there was this one woman who kept on making life really difficult, swearing at Kate, carrying on, making life really difficult and saying, you're hopeless. And then ironically, about some 5 years later, Kate was at church and this one woman hears Kate. She says, what are you doing here? And Kate say, what are you doing here? She said, I became a Christian. And she said, I am really sorry for the words that I said to you. But you showed such grace and such poise, and you made a real impression. So never underestimate the way that we receive apologies and also the way that we receive abuse at times. Doesn't mean you put up with rubbish, you don't put up with crap, but I will encourage you to actually stand up for yourself, stand up for your beliefs, and you personally don't have to put up with that, but also understand and similar question, show some concessions, especially when someone's angry or someone's been ill-treated. You have to understand that they may be acting out, and kids do that all the time. So just come alongside them and help them become emotionally self-regulating, which is another thing we can talk about another time. How do you know the difference between... Oh, no, I've got that one. How can I stop feeling... Oh, no, I've got that one. Brett, this seminar is very seminar. Well, thank you very much. This seminar is very seminar. Could I have a copy of your PowerPoint tonight, please? I would like to reflect on what you said. Hopefully you got the power... taking photos. If we need to, we might be able to put in a PDF or something like that. I'll send it through to you rather than PowerPoint. So, but thank you very much. This seminar is very seminar. Sorry, you probably just typed it. I apologise for making fun of you. That's anonymous. All right. If your needs were all but never met as a child, how do you prevent projection of this into your relationship? Yeah, coming back to family of origin, those things that have shaped you, molded you, had an influence over you, but they do not control you. They do have an influence. But, if you're being brought up with lack, you may respond differently. Sometimes the pendulum may swing completely the opposite. And you become, like you want to spend everything and you're not very good with money. We did a marriage and money tour at the beginning of this year, and that was a very common scenario to talk about. But we can project on those things, but we have to recognize the triggers. Again, back to that recognizing where you're coming from will make all the difference. But also just sharing, this is where I came from. This is how I was brought up. And the more you can talk about that, in fact, if anyone really wants to invest a little bit more time on this, I've actually got a little questionnaire called Family of Origin. And maybe that may be a benefit to you. And you can actually identify, this is where I was, and your spouse, this is where you are, and this is where we can actually try and find a common ground. All right. My son asked me for a mobile phone, but when I give it to him, he can play games on it for the whole day. I am scared hurting his eyes. What should I do? Come next week, and I'll talk about that next week. All right. At the bottom line in summary, I will talk about technology a little bit more next week, but these things are fantastic, but they're also terrible. And we've often, as parents, we can use these things as great babysitters. And we need to take control of it. And I encourage you to start controlling early rather than waiting till the horse bolts. Because once they get a hold of this is just as addictive as any other addictive behaviours. It sends off dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, noradrenaline. We actually get a little high every time there's dings, pings, buzzes, all those type of things. Has anyone actually felt their pocket vibrate one time? And you went to go and feel it and there was nothing there? It's because our body is craving it. We want to be buzzed. We want to be something. We like it. And kids get that same high in the adrenaline. So try and put some boundaries. But don't just make rules for the sake of rules. You need to bring them along and include them in the decisions. It's doable. It's not easy, but it's definitely doable. But I'll talk about that next week, about technology and popular culture and talking to the kids about sex, drugs and alcohol. I'll try and cover it all within at least an hour and allow for Q&A. All right. Have we got any more questions? The rest, sorry. My bad. Thanks for checking up on me. If you have very close friends who have never had conflict or miscommunication, is that a red flag? If you have very close friends who never had conflict or miscommunication with you, is that a red flag? Yes and no. Yes, because I bet you they do have conflict, but you've never seen it. And in fact, I've actually had a number of young couples who have never saw their parents argue, and then they get married and they have their first intense fellowship moment, and they go, I've married the wrong person. Because my parents never fought. It's because they never fought in front of them. So I would encourage couples, when they do have arguments, if they have an argument in front of the kids, to resolve it in front of the kids. And one of my sons actually saw my wife and I having an argument, and I come through the door and we put on our best masks, that mask that says, we're fine. And he said about 4.56 nanoseconds into us moving the house, he goes, what's going on here? Dad, what did you do? It's like, it's my fault. It wasn't. And he says, what you need to do, you need to go out on a date and resolve this issue. But while you're here, resolve it. Go. I said, you're on your own, mate. He goes, but when I get married, I might have the same issue and I want to know how you resolve it. And I said, no, you're on your own. But he got the point that if we argue, we also resolve the issue. And a red flag is not necessarily sometimes there could be if there is a seed of resentment that's built on the inside, and you might be saying everything's fine, but if there is no resolution and someone actually is the pacifist, that will build up. And it's like that a rug, and you keep on sweeping things under the rug, it will trip you over. And so that's the red flag that person is. Absence of conflict is not a healthy relationship is not the absence of conflict. So not having conflict is a concern. But I mean, my wife and I very rarely argue, but we do have disagreements. But we resolve those issues. And we do that as expediently as possible. So that's something to just keep in mind. Most of my date nights end up in argument. I'm not sure if planning a date night is a good idea, or my husband keep Googling on his phone. I'm not too sure about the Googling part, but most date nights end up, well, try and find a neutral territory, something that you both enjoy, but it depends on what you're talking about. Sometimes it might be just going, hey, you know what, let's make an agreement. At the beginning, let's not have an argument. Let's have a great time. Make that set your goal, and then when you come back and you can actually go out and come back and you go, you know what, we didn't argue. That's fantastic. Let's give us a cheer, yay. In fact, if Kate was here, we often, on the day that we do some presentations together or minister together, we usually have an argument. It just always happens. And we were doing something over on the other side of town, and we were driving there, and I said, you know what's funny? We haven't had an argument. She goes, it's an hour and a half drive. Things could happen between now and then. So just go for some small little wins. But when I say date nights, this is for other people. Finances can always get in the way of different things. You can have date nights at home. You can have date nights going for a walk. You can have date nights. We had couch time. Couch time was our time. The kids are running around us, and we'd always, every day, would have a couch time. 10 to 15 minutes just to hear each other, what's going on, what's happening, what's good, what's bad, what's frustrating. And we had the kids around us. We didn't dismiss them at all, but they were included. But we just wanted to make sure that we connected emotionally and relationally. And that's a date. That's a date. Make those little wins, and I can guarantee that it will reduce the amount of tension. So go in with an idea of, let's make it a goal not to argue. And don't talk about the kids. Don't talk about finances. Talk about dreams. Talk about goals. Talk about your bucket list. Talk about the things that you find funny. In fact, looking back can help you look forward. And often Kate and I, we've been married, 33 years, but we remember our first date. We remember our first kiss. We reflect upon it all the time. She was a cougar. She's older. She's older than me. And she kissed me. Like I went, 10%. She went 90%. She's not here to defend herself, so I can say anything I like. Don't email her, that's for sure. In fact, we were hosting a marriage. We were meant to do it together. I was up in Emerald, Queensland. We were hosting a marriage conference, and Kate couldn't come with me because she'd lost her voice. And so I'm telling you all these stories. And everyone says, we need her here next time. And I said, why? I'm telling you these good stories. She goes, we have to clarify and justify to see if you were really telling the truth. So this is all truth. We're videoing this. This is all truth. What does verbal abuse have to be? Does verbal abuse have to be yelling? No, it does not. You can actually have various forms of abuse. There's emotional abuse, there's physical abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's financial abuse, there's psychological abuse, there's spiritual abuse. There's a variety of different things. And in fact, there's some people would say because of, and you might have heard this word, ghosting. Ghosting doesn't mean you're yelling your voice. The other person is manipulating you to think that you're the crazy one. And so they can do that in a very passive way. They may do it deliberately. They have a phone here, and that's where you left the phone. Then they take the phone away, and they hide it. And then you come back and you say, "Where's that phone? Where?" And they might just say, "Well, it's not here. It's not gone." And then you're looking everywhere, and then they'll put the phone back there, and they'll go, "See, you're going crazy." And that may be a poor example, but that's abuse without yelling. So, and if anything resonates that I've shared with you, please contact me and I'll be able to provide you with a variety of podcasts or a variety of articles that will help you. And especially, in fact, it's quite extraordinary when I've been able to help somebody who's been dealing with this to see it in black and white, to recognize, hey, that's me. Because Quite often abuse has taken years to get it where it is. It's very subtle, and it's not obvious, and other people will not recognise it, and the other person, especially if they're narcissistic, true narcissists, are also very charming people. So on the outside, everyone loves them, but to you, they're a nightmare. And that's not ideal for anyone. Is next session parents only? Can we bring kids along? Yeah, the kids can come along. I might say some things that will resonate with them. Other things go, oh, he said that. But I have this motto, it's never too early to talk to your kids at an age-appropriate level. And but if they need to come along, and because of childcare issues, please bring them along. I have no problems with them. You can complain afterwards, but bring them along. My father yells and points his finger at mum and goes over his conversations from 20 years ago. He tells mum that she is 82 but acts under 18. So again, this is someone who is it's an abusive relationship. And I'm sorry that that's happening to you. And I would encourage you to find some help, support for you to navigate and to start building your own self-esteem and your own self-worth. This is someone who is insecure in their own abilities. This is a bully.
That's my dad.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry that this is a bully, and he hasn't processed his own hurts. And he's actually a bully is someone who's actually feeling inferior for whatever reason, and they feel more superior by making others feel inferior. But that's someone who is a small person. Yeah, that's what I would say. Okay. 9 o'clock, I'm finishing on time. I don't think I've got any other questions. That's it. All right. Can I just pray for you? This is just something that I do as a Christian. I'd like to be able to do that for you, and maybe something that I share with you. And even if it's not on your radar about faith, I'm so pleased that you're here. I'm genuinely pleased that you're here. And this is what the church here and is all about, is to help you and your family be the very best they can be. And I really commend the whole team for putting this on. And I'm hoping that you found this tonight worthwhile. And come along next week, register, get other people. Let's fill up this place. We'll see if we can find more people, and especially if the kids come along as well. All right. Father God, I just thank you so much for all these people present. I thank you for their commitment to come along tonight, to learn, to be able to have that spirit of teachability and humility to learn new things and maybe to apply them. And maybe there's some people here who are doing really well. May they continue to go from strength to strength. But other people may need to make some adjustments. And I pray for wisdom and insight. And I pray for you being the great peacemaker and the great comforter to come alongside them, and may they feel your presence in a new and tangible way. And to understand that how much you love each and every one of them. And I give you all the praise and all the glory in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, thanks very much for coming, and I'll hand you back over to the boss.